Up to.
4 lines down.
That's out. Biches. I found finally a safe which is quite good enough a safe I bought yesterday. The laws of an Eiruvin. It's quite clear.
Oh, we're live. Have you figured it?
Yeah.
Wait. Down with Google, otherwise I can't see it.
Right, it's live streaming. So very interesting chumrah. Shai, you said your grandfather has the Eiruvin, right? For London.
It doesn't carry that.
If you put the Eiruvin, where do you have to put the Eiruvin? Does anybody remember where we put the Eiruvin?
Accessible place, no?
Which Eiruvin?
Where would you put it? In the house.
Where most people have access to, no?
It has to be a house. Being the poskim, what happens?
The one here is
Shiur is a house meaning a living space.
in the building.
He says if you put the Eiruvin in a walking cupboard, not a walking cupboard, like a cloak cupboard, the shine in the poskim with the Eiruvin is kosher.
That's in the house. That's a separate.
Because it has to be in a room which you can live in. The room which you can live in has to be 16 square meters. What? You can't live there, 16 square meters.
You read the first few pages of Harry Potter, he lives under the stairs.
Oh,
so
it's 16 square meters.
Is it okay?
I've read bits and pieces. Oh, so covered in the kitchen. Covered in the kitchen is not considered its own domain.
It's the kitchen.
It's the kitchen.
What's considered own domain? What size is it? Dimensions?
No, so that's the question. Do we say it's a very
wardrobe?
A wardrobe could be a big problem.
What's the difference between that and a cupboard? Because it's sitting in the middle somewhere.
So that's
not quite big enough for living space. It's
that's
big
it.
for
Exactly.
3 weeks to get pizza.
It's age to come, no? We're up to Peches Amud Aleph.
Right. Have a laptop for when we have to keep the laptop at home.
When we finish, I'll get everyone a laptop.
We have the lighting, please.
Like in 5 years,
Can we choose?
Fact is, we're already up for just challenge that there's fireworks outside and we have to switch off. So let's try to. They are closed. Again, we're up to Daf Peches Amud Aleph, 6 lines from the top. Omar Rabba, beginning of a line. Till now, we've been talking about getting water from a river. Now we're going to discuss disposing water. Victor Miller used to say that a person should thank Hashem every day for plumbing. Can't imagine a world without plumbing, how difficult it was. You read books in older days, how they struggled without plumbing. Without plumbing, there are 2 main problems. One is getting hold of water, and the other one is disposing of wastewater. There are 2 reasons why disposing of wastewater, Chazal was slightly more machmir than getting water. What? 2 reasons why they were more machmir with disposing of wastewater. More machmir, slightly more machmir. What? No, so why should be more machmir?
Because the maker with normal water needs for life.
Drinking water is something which a person needs for life. Getting rid of water is not quite as important. That's one reason. And the second reason is that getting water, if you've got the water underneath your window and you take water into your house, you're not doing a proper form of carrying. Getting rid of water, you want to send it away. Sending water away is an act, a conscious act of Hitzah, and therefore it could be more problematic. Now, we learned till now that a person is allowed to rely, if you remember, on this box, this enclosure, to take water out of a river. Omar Rabba Baravunu, we're only permitted to fill water with this enclosure. But to dispose of it, also it is also. Maskra of Shizbi. We're going to learn in the next Mishnah the concept of a cesspool. A cesspool is a special hole in the ground which you get rid of all your wastewater. And the Mishnah gives a certain colors. Right, maybe Polly, you can start putting up some pictures. From Tov, you can do Tov Kuf Chof Aleph, the first 5 pictures of Tov Kuf Chof Aleph. First 5 pictures. Tov Kuf Chof Aleph, the first 5 pictures. Mask Flo Shizbi. Shizbi asks a question. What's the question? Everything seems to be. You need to get into this. I know it's not the easiest. We're doing a mitzvah and finishing a pirk. It's a special schus. Think about how much schar we will get. Think about the fact that had we been in Stoim would never have been destroyed. Can you imagine? This is what there's Yehuda's on.
It doesn't count.
What's the difference between this and a cesspool and a pit? Where the Gemara there, Mishnah says it's okay. Answers the Gemara, Hani Taimi, Bani Lo Taimi. In this pool, the water gets absorbed into the ground. When you pour water into a stream of water, let's say, for example, you've got a canal outside your house, living in Venice, and you pour water out of your window, is the water going to get absorbed in the ground? No, it's going to be taken with the river out. So therefore, you're actually doing a form of Eitzah, and therefore you cannot rely on this Kezus Torah. Even though we will permit it, as we will see, if you've got a pit in the ground, but not for this. Says the Gemara, Ikadami. Yes, it's less of a problem. Why is it less of a problem? Because it's not Eitzah. You're not. It's staying there. It's staying. Why is it not proper carrying? When you pour water, right? But if you remember, we said when you add water, it is carrying because it was all one body. If you put a bowl on top, it's not. Oh, no, because only if you've got something which is to enhance the water. If you've got say, plants there, etc. I mean, talk about over here where there's no problem. So here, why isn't it? Okay. Yeah. Okay. That you're fulfilling is permitted, but lishbrich asa, but pouring out is asa. Lishbrich, let me show you. According to this second version, pouring out is permitted. Omar Rav Shizbi Pshita, of course, Hanukkah, it's the same as the next Mishnah. He says, well, no, it's not the same. Ma'adatayim Hani Taimi, that the next Mishnah, the water is going to get absorbed. Hani Lo Taimi, it's not going to get absorbed. Kumash Malon, that even though it doesn't get absorbed, it is permitted. So we have 2 versions, and the halacha is lahakel. That we have a general principle. What's the general principle? Halacha k'tiva meikol be'eruvin. Now it's interesting because I've been reading the Sefer, as I said, I managed to finally find the Sefer, which I think is quite good. It says this halacha k'tiva meikol be'eruv is regarding when you've got a shaila whether it is mutter or asa. Regarding whether it's a wall or not a wall, we don't say halacha k'tiva meikol. It gets quite common. It's not always we say halacha k'tiva meikol. We had actually in the Tosfos. Let's go very briefly. What happened was, this is a picture we've seen many times uploaded before, where you've got 2 enclosures, one lower, one higher. And what happened was that everybody wants to be able to use the higher one, so you're not allowed to use it. Says the Gemara, if there's 4 tefachim separate, muteres. If there's 4 tefachim distance between the 2 platforms, plus the platform on top is high, then the top one is considered uniquely for the upper people, not for the lower people. And therefore, even if they never made an Eruv together, the lower one do not forbid the upper one from being able to use it, and without an Eruv, they're allowed to use it. Why not? Does anybody remember? Anybody who remembers should get an extra drink of hot water.
Hot water?
Yes, hot water.
Tonight.
What is the reason? Does anybody remember? You should remember this. So what they're away from each other?
It's not one area. Two separate areas.
The lotion of you're saying it half right. No, you're not getting extra whiskey. What? No, we had it. We had it in the Gemara. That whenever something, the only way to access it is to go through airspace, we consider it to be inaccessible, and if it's inaccessible, you do not have the ability to forbid it. No, you don't make it. You don't forbid it. Look at picture. Okay, let's say which number picture, but you should really. It should know by now. Top picture Tov Kuf Chof Beis.
Yeah, it was a ladder. Yeah.
Right. Now, because here it's
Another joined it.
okay, it doesn't make a difference. The fact is, the only way to access it is to go through airspace. It's 4 tvach of distance. This was a bit less than 4 tvach. It doesn't make any difference. The reality is,
You need to use the air.
you need to go through air. And airspace does not forbid. That means if I've got, for example, we talked about the fact that if I want to be able to get something from your Rishus, and the only way to get it is for me to go through airspace, then it's not like, example, I had three ruins. We're going to have it later. 3 ruins. The ruin next to me, I'm allowed to use. Why am I allowed to use it? Oh, you can also use it because the one in the middle is in the way. So the only way for you to access it is through airspace. Airspace doesn't ask. Says the Gemara, you do not forbid your friend if the only way you access is through there. We had a machlokes about the Rav is a shitosi. Omar Rabba Omar B'chir Rabbi Yosef Omar Rabbi Yosef. Yesh gezer b'Shabbos v'chuva machzeh lebayim. There's a concept of stealing on Shabbos, and the ruin goes back to the owners on Shabbos. These two statements are contradictory. They can't be both true. The more will ask that in a minute. But let's get clear both statements. Yesh gezer b'Shabbos. There is a concept that gezer is koina. If I steal something of yours, then I am kohen of it. For example, let's say for argument's sake, this box of tissues belongs to you, Ben, and I steal it off you. And then what happens is, somebody steals it off me, or a bolt of lightning comes and ruins it and makes it burnt. Can I say to you, look, I stole it off you, here you can have it back now. Why? It's my responsibility. It's considered mine. By stealing it, it's as if it's my ownership, and therefore now it's my responsibility. It's as if it's mine, and I owe you a box of tissues. I can't say to you, take back what. So let's say I steal your bike and it gets a puncture. So I say, oh, very good. Now you can have your bike back. Can't do that. So the Gemara and I haven't understood. Yesh gezer b'Shabbos means like this: that if I've got a ruin next to my house, and you don't use it because let's say you live far away, but it belongs to you, and I use it all the time, so now it's considered mine. If it's considered mine, so therefore I'm allowed to carry it, not you, because. But the next statement is that when you've got a ruin, you have to give it back to the original owners. Says the Gemara, Gufa Kasha, almost says because you're kohen of it. And if you're kohen of it, what does that mean? That you can carry that. Not kohen, that you have to give it back to the original owners. And that there's the concept of gezer of Shabbos, which is which is a mitzvah that if you steal something, you have to return it. That means like this: that if you've got a ruin next to my house, and I take things from my house into this ruin all the time, since at the end of the day it does not belong to me, therefore, even though you know you don't live nearby, I'm not allowed to carry there on Shabbos. Says the Gemara, Omar Rabba Moisuna, we asked the Kasha Ma'una Halacha, because if you remember, it was Rabba who spoke. If you look, Omar Rabba Omar B'chir, we asked the Kasha Ma'una Halacha. If you've got 2 platforms, one's high, one's low, then the people in the higher one, they share it to the people of the lower one. And therefore, since there's no Eiruvin, nobody is allowed to use it. We almost say, so it's why they forbid it. More than I haven't understood, like Moshe said a few days ago, that the upper people, they own the platform, they built the enclosure. Why should it be just because the lower people use it to get water? What right do they have to forbid it? And says the Gemara, they built it together. So since they built it together, so therefore it belongs to both. And now there's no Eruv, so therefore they forbid. The Mishnah says that if the top one has and the bottom one doesn't, then since everybody uses the top one, so therefore it's a shutfus. And since it's a shutfus without an Eruv, it's forbidden. Let's say the bottom one would have made their own one. Who cares? Since they built the top one together, it belongs to everybody together, and they never made an Eruv. Since they never made an Eruv, so therefore it's forbidden. And it says more, if the lower people would make their own enclosure, what they're establishing is that they don't care about the above one, and therefore they're giving it back to them and allowing them to use it on their own. So it comes out from this Gemara that even though I did say once, that I take it back a bit, that when we talk about Shabbos, we talk about only jurisdiction. The Gemara establishes not like that. And you also have to have ownership. So if, for example, there's a chotzer, there's a garden next to my house which belongs to you, but you don't use it. Let's say, for example, if you go to Albert Avenue next to the mikveh, there's a piece of land which belongs, is privately owned, and people use it. The halacha is you are not allowed to carry from your house. I actually lived there. I lived 110 Albert Avenue for a few years. So let's say from my back garden you could have used it. You can't use it because in the end of the day, we say that it goes back to the original owners and you can't carry from your house to their house, even though the original owner does not use it at all. New Mishnah. The Mishnah is discussing how to get rid of water. The Mishnah describes three main methods to get rid of water. Let's look maybe at the picture for a second. Pictures aren't brilliant, but I haven't seen any better pictures, so therefore we'll have to stick to those. If you look at picture Tov Kuf Chav Gimel, and those who don't have a picture should try and see one. There are three main methods to get rid of wastewater on Shabbos. One method is like this. If you look at Tov Kuf Chav Gimel, I don't know if you can see it so well, towards the back wall, there's a hole in the ground. A drain, regular drain, that's a nice word, successful. Now, the Mishnah says it has to hold sosai, 2 sa'ah. 2 sa'ah. Now, what does it mean it has to hold 2 sa'ah? Rabbi Yonason explains like this. Every cesspool has to have a place to drain it, right? Usually, the cesspool has another plug at the bottom to come out of it. But it has to be that there's 2 sa'ah below the pipe. So then that way, it can always store their 2 sa'ah. Why does it have to have that much? Because that is the normal amount of wastewater a family gets rid of on one Shabbos. So therefore, if you happen to have more, we don't care. As long as you put enough there, that's the normal amount to get rid of, it's okay. Now look at Tufkaf Chov Dalet. This person did a different kind of cesspool. What he did was, he made a ditch, actually in the Rishus Harabim, and then he covered it over with boards. It's called likmoy, to cover it over. And he made the entrance from his garden. Now that's also okay. Does anybody want to explain to me what's the logic that should be okay? To pour water from your house into that hole is okay. Why would anybody?
You made it like an extension to the Shusay Yachid.
Very
Like
good.
if you make from one side of the road to the other, you cover it over. We said you could carry.
Presumably those boards need to be a certain width and a certain.
I would have said even better than that. Is let's say, for example, this is a Shusay Yachid, and I've got a hole in the wall. It's part of the Shusay Yachid. It's an appendix. So therefore, even though most of the cesspool, most of this drain is where? But the only access point to it is through the Shusay Yachid. So it's considered Shusay Yachid. If you live, let's for example, I don't know what the legal thing would be. Let's say you've got a house, you've got a basement, and you dig underneath. Let's say you've got a basement on King's Road, and you dig underneath your house all the way under King's Road. So now somebody walking on top of it, it's walking the Shusay Harabim. Let's say King's Road is Shusay Harabim. But underneath it, what is the basement to Shusay Yachid or Shusay Harabim? Shusay Yachid, because this is the idea. You built yourself a cesspool underneath. And let's just one more picture. Tov Kuf Chafei. Here is a sewage pipe. There's a sewage pipe which the first part of it is covered. Those are the three methods to get rid of, and there's different halachas and different shittas about how they work. So here, it is better in the sense that you've covered it. It is worse. Why is it worse, a sewage pipe?
How would you get the water into?
No, it goes from the garden. It does not look like it's going from the garden. Because when you pour it into the drain pipe, it gushes out. And it looks like you're directing your flow straight out. It's not like where you're pouring it into your cesspool and afterwards it overflows into the Shusay Harabim. You're pouring it straight into Shusay Harabim. So let's see. Now, if you've got a big garden, then it's permitted to pour it even without a cesspool. The Gemara will discuss why, if you've got a big garden, big chutzah, you do not need a cesspool. Does anyone want to say a piece of logic? Why, if you've got a big chutzah, do you not need a cesspool?
It takes a longer time to get to the Shusay Harabim.
Very good. I would say simpler. It'll get absorbed in the garden. You'll pour your wastewater into your garden. Who cares? By the time who says it will go into the Shusay Harabim? Okay. So this is like this.
Depends on the surface.
What do you say?
The waste pipe, if you actually go outside, pour it in.
That's definitely awesome. Because then you're taking the waste and going outside. That's definitely awesome. We're talking about always.
No, it's talking about the garden.
If you pour it in your garden, that we will see. That is the shayla. That is the third shayla.
Anyway, it's gonna on soil. You can't pour water on soil.
because it's severe.
And if it's not soil,
Then it
then
won't
it's not going to absorb. So
Let's say we're talking about pebbles. Let's say pebbles. So chotze shiprus ba'abamas, a god which is smaller than 4 square amos. How much is 4 square amos? 16 square amos. Ein shevchi b'seich b'mayim b'Shabbos. Elim kin also lo ukom machzekes or simon nekev lo mata. It has to hold 2 saw from the hole below the hole. We explained the hole referring to, like when you have a bath, there's an overflow. So over here, every cesspool has to have an overflow. They don't have a hole at the bottom because that's the whole idea of cesspools to be able to absorb it. But it has to have an overflow plug. It has to have 2 saw below the overflow plug because that's a big hole. If it goes outside, you have to cover it. You don't need to cover it. We explained the idea of covering it is in order that it should look like it's coming from Shusayachit. As a pipe, which is covered, for water on Shabbos. You're not allowed to pour in a pipe. You're not allowed to pour in a pipe because it's different to pouring into your garden. When you pour in a pipe, it comes gushing out, and therefore it's forbidden. You're allowed to pour on top of your rooftop. That means if you pour at the top of your roof and then it drains off the side of the roof onto the bench of the pipe, that's permitted. In the beginning of the Mishnah, we said that garden, which is 4 amos, is okay. Says the Mishnah that if you've got part of it is a balcony, let's say part of it is a covered area, and part of it is a chotzer, what do you say? Canopy. Then together you can count it as 4 amos. You've got part of the chotzer is covered, part of it is uncovered. All together, as long as the surface of the ground is 4 square amos, 16 square amos, that's good enough. You've got 2 houses, 2 lofts. One side, you've got a house, 2 houses next to each other. One made a cesspool, one did not. And the Gemara will explain what we're discussing in this case. It says, well, my Tama, what is the reason that if you've got a 16 square amos, meaning a 4x4 garden, you're allowed to pour without a cesspool? Everybody uses normally 2 saw every day. So, what have you got in your charts? Wait a second. So, sign. I forgot that. I should know it by myself. So, in milliliters is 144 liters. No.
14,400 milliliters.
Yeah, 100 milliliters per liter. 1,000. No.
Yes.
1.4 liters. Very good. No, 1.4 liters.
No,
14 liters. 14.
28 liters. 28 liters.
Very good. 28 liters. Very good. Very good. My brain. 28 liters.
So how much? That's like 20 bottles of Coke.
Wow, it's a lot. Now, the Gemara over here says something very interesting, which I'm not so used to it. It's interesting. I tell you how. I should have remembered it. That to mikveh, what's the smallest size of a mikveh? It's 40 saw. 40 saw times 14 liters, about 640. It's 14 times. It's 560. I remember what the left saying that a mikveh should have 600 liters. That's like if you want to be really maching. 600 liters.
It's not a lot. Half a cubic meter.
600 liters. Amos. Yeah, but how much is in square meters? A square meter has 1,000 liters. Less than a square meter. Okay.
It's very small. You can't fit in there if you want.
That's why they have these when they're not down. They have these
These people jacuzzis, the mini
yeah, they have
jacuzzis,
these
the alpha
big
jacuzzis.
water tank things
What for?
for mikveh in the garden.
Did they?
No, yeah, they had like
not for women, for men.
it was a bin.
It was like
Yeah, you can use a bin.
no, it wasn't. And they're using
Because of Troyes.
You mean the ones that go on a pallet on a forklift?
Yes, the water tank. They use that as a mikveh.
Oh, now the Gemara carries
So
on
what's it called?
with a piece of logic which is hard for us to accept. That when you've got a garden which is 16 square amos, you want to look after it. How would you look after your garden? What's the best thing to do to your garden? Is to irrigate it every day, to soak it every day, because that way it makes the dust not get into your face. So therefore says Rabbi like this, when you've got a garden which is 16 square amos, it's an important garden, you want to look after it. Less than 16 amos, you don't care. So therefore, if it's 16 square amas, you like the garden, you want to look after it, therefore you want to pour the water and it should stay in the garden. Once it's less than that, you want the water to come out, and therefore it's forbidden. Let's see the last animal. 4 amas, and you want to sprinkle it, top of Beches and base. Then you want to get rid of it. Therefore, it is a cesspool shoy. Abamas timing, which is I find easier to understand. I shouldn't say this, but 4 amas will get absorbed in the ground. Abamas low timing won't get absorbed in the ground. No, because if it's a small area, it's more likely to flow away. It's low space or go out. My benai, what's enough? If you've got 16 amas, it's 4 by 4. What happens if it's 8 by 2? 8 by 2 will absorb the same amount as 4 by 4. No, it will absorb because it's got the same amount of air. What absorbs it is the ground space, the ground. I've ever watched video, I'm aware that when they build these big supermarkets, they reckon that there's in a 2-hour range and a heavy rainfall, you can get 2 centimeters of rain. Wait a second, 2 centimeters. Now, the drainage of a huge car park, like a Sainsbury's car park with a thing, and they describe how much water they have to reckon on displacing. It's unbelievable, the amounts. It's just because it gets times. It doesn't work. It's displacing. But anyway, so it's got to do with the ground space. Let's go. It's got to do with the ground space. According to Rab Zeva, that you have to have 16 square amas, so it doesn't matter if it's 8 by 2, because 8 by 2 will also absorb that much. According to Rabbi, what's Rabbi's logic? That's an important garden. An important garden is only if it's 4 by 4. If it's 8 by 2, if you've got a very long and thin garden, you don't care about it. No, because it gets absorbed. It gets pull it all over. Says the Gemara. The Mishnah says you can include a chotz and echsad. And one I haven't understood. And what happens is like this: you have a garden, let's say, which is 10 square amas, and off the garden you have an echsad, like a porch or something, which is another 6 square amas. And the Mishnah says you can be mitzvah the two together to make it how much? 16 square amas. Now, according to Rab Zera, that's very good because you've got 16 square amas of ground. So it'll get absorbed. But according to Rabbi, what did he say? What was his logic? That has to be an important garden. If you've got a patch which is 10 and another patch which is 6, that's not important. At the end of the day, that's like an 8 by 2, which you don't even like. So God says, Bishlim Rabbi Zeh, Nichel and Rabbi Kasha. Answers what Tigum Rabbi Zeh, Alibet Rabbi, Bachsad, Vanechsapei Kolachotze Kola. We're not talking about you've got one garden and next to it, off it on the corner, a porch. You've got a porch which runs along the entire garden. So let's say half of it is uncovered and half of it is covered, but it's actually the garden itself is 4 by 4. Some of it has got an achsad on top of it, some of it's not. So that's a choshva garden. But if indeed you'd have a garden which off it on the corner there's another achsad, then according to Rabbi, you would not be mutter. This is what Toshima. A garden, a chotz which doesn't have 4 by 4, you can't pour water. Now, the losh of the Mishnah is mashma. If it doesn't have 4 by 4, it doesn't say it doesn't have 16 square amas. If it doesn't have 4 by 4, it's mashma. If it's 8 by 2, it's no good because it doesn't have 4 by 4. So Rab Zera, because of this, retracts. And Rab Zera says, indeed, my shit was only according to some people, but our Mishnah is not like me. That means that this brisa, the brisa, this is a brisa, is not like me. Meaning like this, let's get it clear. Certain shitters hold that it's got to do with absorption, and therefore makes no difference if it's 4 by 4, 8 by 2. That brisa says it's got to do with the chashivus of the garden, and therefore it's only if it's 4 by 4. And that's why that brisa uses the loshon if it doesn't have 4 by 4. Says the Gemara, why there's a very strange thing over here. What does he do? He explains Pshat in our Mishnah because it's got to do absorbing, and therefore makes no difference if it's 4 by 4, 8 by 2. And then when we find a brisa that says not like that, he says it's a machlokes tanoim. Why did they have to do all of this? Why not just say like Rabbah and say that the reason of the Mishnah is to do with the choshva garden, and in that way you don't need to make a machlokes between the Mishnah and the brisa. And everybody agrees the Svar of Rabbah has got to do with the chashivus of the garden. Why did he do all of this? This is the Chotzer Sheba Abamas and Abamas. The Losh of the Mishnah is Chotzer Shibchusama Abamas. A Chotzer which got less than 4 by 4 amas. Why talk about that? Why not just say a garden which doesn't have 4 by 4? The Lashon of the Mishnah clearly defines that it does not matter of which shape it is. It doesn't care which shape. As long as it has that area, it is mutter. So we've got now, according to Rabbah, the whole logic is only to do with a chashva garden it makes, and therefore it depends what the size of the garden. It has to be 4 by 4. According to Abzeh, it's machlekas hanon. Our Mishnah is going like of Lezman Yaakov that says it's got an absorption. That Braisa, which says 4 by 4, is going according to the Chabonon, and they say it's got to the Chashivas of the garden. Says the Gemara, with the Sefer Lezman Yaakov, Veshilav Lezman Yaakov. Since later the Mishnah of Lezman Yaakov argues with our Mishnah regarding a gutter, that's a raya that the first one, the Mishnah is not of Lezman Yaakov. Answers the more could of Lezman Yaakov. The whole Mishnah is of Lezman Yaakov, and the Mishnah you have to add in like this. Shabbos not allowed to pour water. If it's got 4 amas by 4 amas, it doesn't matter which shape. Because as long as there's an area which you could get absorbed, we don't care. And therefore, if you've got a pipe which is 4 amas long, it is mutter. Rashi and other Rishonim point out, therefore, it comes out that this pipe has to be what in English is called porous, I think. Something that can absorb. If it's not something that can absorb, then you cannot pour even the kunta Lezman Yaakov. In our Mishnah, we have 2 shittas. Shittas Rabbi Lezman Yaakov is allowed to pour directly into the pipe. Shittas Chachamim is allowed to pour onto the roof, and from there it should go onto the pipe. Shittas Chananya is even on the roof, it's forbidden. So our Mishnah is not like Chananya, because Chananya says you're not allowed to pour even on the roof. And it's all to do with the Gzir D'Rabbanan, as we will see. Does it look like you're trying to discard the water in a way that people can obviously see that you're doing Hitzah? Tana. This Mishnah was only talking about the summer. In the winter, you can do what you want. The reason is like this. In the winter, a person's garden is very, very muddy. Since it's so muddy and so much water there, nobody cares if the water is left or not left. So therefore, all the halachas we learned until now is only in the summer. In the winter, you can do what you want. It says, well, my tama. He doesn't care. The word voitza he already points out. It's not that he wants it, but that he doesn't care. He doesn't care if the water stays there. That nice in our Mishnah, where you've got less than 4 by 4, where a person sometimes doesn't care that it should stay there. An African Mishnah says it shouldn't. Meaning like this, that or you've got a long pipe, you don't care if the water gets absorbed in the pipe, and nevertheless, Tanakhama says it's forbidden. In the winter, what should you be choshesh? Is it because people will pour the water into the chotzer and try and push it straight out because they don't want the garden to get ruined? In the winter, it's anyway mekulka. In the winter, all pipes are gushing with water. Meaning like this. When a person pours water into his garden, there are 2 main reasons to forbid it on Shabbos. One is because he's trying to do hitzah. He's trying to get rid of the water. He's trying to move from Shusay Achitei Kamas. Another reason is that people seeing the water coming out, even if he's not trying to do it, they'll assume that he's doing it. So one is because he's actually doing it, and one is because people watching will come to that conclusion. Says Rava, that's only true in the summer. But in the winter, that's not the case. Because in the winter, nobody's trying to push the water out of the garden because it's useless. He's anyway got wastewater in his garden, nothing he can do about it. And second of all, what's the other cheshbon? The other cheshbon is that people won't be choshet him because they see that the pipes are gushing all the time, and therefore they know it's nothing to do with him. Masha'en kain, according to the Chachamim, when you pour it down the pipe, we're choshesh that it will constantly flow out the pipe. It'll be awesome. Now the Gemara says a very similar thing. Omar Nachman b'mosag shomim in winter ukamachzik susayim, a cesspool which has susayim, no susayim. And Tosis, look at Tosis, bottom Tosis. I was very relieved when I saw this Tosis. Ukamachzik susayim, no susayim, not dak susayim. Ela afilu kuraim, jela vachin nechem susayim nesor. He was lav dafki. He meant sasayim and more. If you've got a cesspool which has got the ability to hold 2 saw, you can pour in as much as you want. But saw only a saw. Only sasayim. Saw and kaliki, you're not allowed to use it at all. That means in the summer, if you've got a cesspool which only holds 1 saw, about 14 liters, then you cannot use at all whatsoever. Why are we forbidding somebody who's got a little cesspool, a little pool, a little place for the wastewater to go? Why are we forbidding him to put even the amount that can fit in? Let him put in the amount that can fit in. And so he might come to put even more. And if we allow him a bit, he'll come to use more, and he'll want the water to go out, and then people will see that he's pouring water. And what's the same logic? What should be choshesh? That means the Gemara is not choshesh for winter to summer, and in the winter as well. If you've only got 1 saw and you pour 2 or 3 saw, we don't care. Why? Because nobody will be choshesh that you're doing it. Nobody will see it as being a right out to pour out, because they'll say to themselves that it's winter anyway, it's pipes are gushing. And your person himself is not doing it on purpose he's not doing a conscious decision because he doesn't care anyway. As the Gemara says inside, it's already word. Even the Kuraim says it's referring to even by a saw. And by the winter, if you've got a saw, you're allowed to pour as much as you want. It's only in the summer that we're machmis. Again, in the winter, you're allowed to pour into your garden all the wastewater that you want without any problem, even if you have no cesspool. In the summer, if you've got a cesspool less than sasayim, you can't use it at all. Because once we allow you less, you might come to use more. And the reason is because when since a normal person uses that much, it is understandable that he'll likely come to use more. Mashenkin in the winter, once he's got sasayim, they will allow him even more. They will allow him as much as he wants. Okay. If you've got 2 lofts opposite each other, and one loft made a cesspool at the bottom of his house, that means he's living upstairs, and then he's got like a sloping roof, and at the bottom where the roof is going to be, that means at the bottom there, he made himself like a special place to drain a big pit in the ground. Another side, they didn't. But the other side also want to, because their roof would also slope down and come to the same place. So the Mishnah says only the ones that dug the hole are entitled to pour down, the other people not. Says the even if they made an Eiruvin, the other people are not allowed to. If they made an Eiruvin, there's no problem with source. What is the problem? Says the Gemara, by my time, because by doing so much, it will come out, it will overflow, and it will go into the Shusavim, and you're doing it in order to carry. Whether it's a cesspool, Gistor is a broken pool, Brecha, pond, even a bowl. That once you have a cesspool which is 2 saw, as we said earlier, once you've got it, Chazal allowed you to pour even more. Why? Because they said that once you've got that amount, the fact that you want to pour extra is not a problem. Because people, once you've established that you've made that pool for people to remember, they won't come to pour out. That's right. So therefore, once you've made your size is big enough, since your intention is for this, therefore it doesn't matter where it flows. But if you didn't make it, so then Chazal said, since you know that that's the amount you need, it's no good. Says Rava, Topik, Testament Aleph, they never made an Eiruvin. So they never made an Eiruvin. Since they never made an Eiruvin, so therefore they're forbidden. If they would make an Eiruvin, it's mutter. If they didn't make an Eiruvin, so what? So this explains what's mean why not. At the end of the day, you're carrying from one rishus to a joint rishus. Because at the end of the day, the cesspool belongs to both, even though only one of them dug it, based on the area which is shared by both. So why allowed to? Answers to this is an interesting svot, that this is called Bo Mikoichoi. And the Rabbanon did not forbid a Bo Mikoichoi on Shabbos. We actually once had it by a boat, where if a person's traveling on a boat and he's got wastewater, he's allowed to pour it onto the sides of the boat and let it fall into the sea. Why? Because something which is bar mikoicha is okay.
Yeah,
So-
that's a sukkah. Put your sukkah on your grass. And when you open the roof, the water's going to run up.
I forgot that. That's a very good example. If you open your roof and the water goes onto grass, it's no good. But if you open the roof and it goes onto concrete, and from there it rolls onto grass, then it's okay, because it's only considered bomb kirche. It's not considered as if you're doing that. Nice example. Says the Gemara, if we allow you to do it from a flow from the house onto the roof, you'll then come to carry properly from your house into the thing, and therefore it's forbidden. On the other side, since they made the effort of the cesspool, Chazal permitted it. We're now up to learn it, it again and again, and to finish Eiruvin. Right, so tomorrow,
For the next 6 years. No, for the next 10 years.
I was going to go, but I didn't have the car. I walked, and I couldn't bother schlepping.
Yeah, left home.
Yeah, I can have it to walk. It depends. It depends. You don't schlepp from my lunch. I'm just trying to think. Wait a second. We're now up to pay. We're going to be doing it tomorrow.
We're gonna have enough time, or
That's what I'm trying to think.
private prayer.
You're not allowed to be here now.
No, that's too
No, in education, you're not allowed in the shul. Education, you're not allowed in the shul.
No.
We're not in the shul.
We're getting
Fireworks for the seal.
Motzei Shabbos is 8 o'clock. Mitzvah Hashem. And tomorrow she'll be straight after Shacharis.
Just do less and not Shabbos, do more.
Yes, I was thinking of doing a bit now, but I think it's a bit late now. Isn't it? Right.
To get us into the Shabbos.
Yes.
Shabbos.
So you're putting up fireworks because of the seal.
Shabbos.
Mama, what have you done to your leg? Football. Did you know how?
What happened? You hurt your foot?
Yeah, nothing. Nothing.
My leg still hurts. From how long is that? 2 months ago.
Yeah, he does brought the booze. Come on.
Oh wow.
Everybody gets
This is all for me. What have you got? Anyone else? We got it now.
Yeah.
All your small.
It is very warm. Maybe show you.
What?
Oh wow, you bought one proper seal. Oh very
Rosie,
good.
look, Rosie.
Moshe, I know you're complaining about. You're the range of proper seal. Very good. Thank you very much.
You're
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you.